Today on the Topping Show, Matt Walsh calls for common sense restrictions on transgenders. The transgender who shot up the Minnesota Catholic school noted that he regretted being transitioned and noted he was brainwashed. Minnesota mayor wants to ban black guns, also known as semi-automatic rifles that they call assault rifles. Lotus is cutting jobs in the UK, and a carabiner is being recalled because it might just break during usage. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT, value-added reseller, and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. Ease me, see that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free flamethrower with every IT purchase, with Picatinny rail adapters that can mount it to any standard AR-15, like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the flamethrower button to learn more and see me shooting a flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button and tell your friends and your enemies, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have some sad news for Lotus. They are doing more layoffs. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Motor1.com. And they say, quote, Lotus is slashing jobs in the UK, a punch in the stomach. Lotus's anticipated revival under Geely has faced significant challenges. Now tariffs are upending its business, which a revival by taking a business that's best known for making fun track cars that were lightweight, manual transmission, actually, well, for the engine, reliable because it was a Toyota, and then saying we're going to make an EV company out of this company. The anticipated revival? No. I mean, maybe dark humor to laugh at this, but most enthusiasts saw the writing on the wall. Lotus is not going to make it if they go all in on EVs. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's one of the variables, one of the reasons why they're starting to suffer. There you can see one of the iconic Lotus logos there on the screen. And again, it's credited to Motor1.com, specifically Chris Perkins. And they say, quote, Lotus's rebirth under Geely ownership has been moving slow. The Amero sports car showed plenty of promise, but it was hampered by production delays and a higher price than initially promised, which, again, they do have at least a V6 with a stick shift. It's pretty fun, but again, it's a little too heavy compared to what Lotus used to stand for. And the price tag is comical. I think it's like $80,000 to $90,000. But again, I know now it's basically an antique, but the Lotus Elise, I mean, that was, to me, where they peaked in terms of popularity, performance, in terms of being a dedicated track car, and being light. I mean, it's basically like a British Mazda Miata. Though it had a Japanese heart, with the Toyota power plant in there. But I think that's where they kind of peaked. They've been kind of going downhill ever since. Now, they say the Emeya and Elantra, the EVs, haven't been pretty popular either, which, yeah, it says, and being made in China, well, at least that's how I always read it, they are prohibitively expensive thanks to tariffs. Now Lotus is making huge job cuts because, yeah, EVs, they don't make any money except for Tesla. To Elon's credit, they've somehow made a profit on EVs, partially thanks to government subsidies, but nevertheless, EVs lose money left and right. And Lotus is trying to compete with EVs, where EVs, let's be honest, are glorified smartphones from China that can be easily ripped off, replicated. You're not going to beat them in that game. Most companies are all losing money when it comes to their EVs. And Lotus going from a enthusiast brand, trying to go mainstream, which, again, I think Porsche is the only luxury kind of sports brand that really is historically successful, going from, again, we're making the great 911, we're making some great small sports cars, they're going to make an SUV. They actually, and of course SUVs are largely profitable, they've actually done really well with the SUVs and crossovers at Porsche. It makes me smile to think that there was a time where you can get a V8 stick shift SUV from Porsche. Unfortunately, not so much these days. And again, Porsche on their EV SUVs, still losing money. But Lotus making SUV, maybe, but not an EV. Now, they say, quote, the BBC reports that Lotus is making 550 job cuts at the Headstale UK headquarters, which has around 1,300 employees total. In a statement, the automaker said, quote, we believe this is necessary in order to secure a sustainable future for the company in today's rapidly evolving automotive environment, which is seeing uncertainty with rapid changes in the global policies, including tariffs. Unquote. They did say that Lotus did affirm its commitment to the UK and said that Heathrow, which the automaker opened in 1966, will remain open for its sports car, motorsports, and engineering consultative operations. Unquote. In addition, the company said it is, quote, actively exploring future growth opportunities to diversify Lotus's car business model, including including thorough third-party manufacturing, which, again, there's been some good Lotus engineers throughout the years. Don't get me wrong; they've had some great collaborations throughout history, but I don't think that's going to be what saves Lotus. Now, they say that, quote, we've reached out to Lotus to find out whether job cuts are primary in manufacturing. The automaker previously cut 270 jobs in Hochul back in February. It did post a $200 million loss in the first half of 2024, despite some sales momentum. And the outlook for the automotive industry was a lot different a year ago than it is now. Labor movement of Parliament for South Norfolk, Ben Goltensberg, described the news as a punch to the stomach. However, he did add that the worst-case scenario has been avoided, which is a complete and utter closure of Lotus UK. Unquote. Despite its being regarded among enthusiasts, Lotus has always been in some state of financial trouble, especially since the death of the founder, Colin Chapman, in 1982. Geely's initially successful and hands-off stewardship of Volvo got many feeling optimistic when it acquired Lotus in 2017, but now the future looks bleak for the iconic sports car brand, which, and again, they've had an up and down trajectory throughout the years, and they're trying to do a lot. And again, there are some issues in terms of Lotus is being forced to make EVs. That has a lot of totalitarian evil governments around the globe forcing these automotive companies to make things in which they lose money, and China's going to beat them inevitably because of that, because China rips off tech better than anyone else on the planet. So Lotus is being forced to make EVs. I know that's, they don't want to necessarily, but I'm just thinking, like, what's a compelling reason to buy a Lotus? They used to be the sports cars, which, again, I've already noted the Elise being one of the coolest ones out there. But the newer one, again, it's nearly $100,000. And again, I love the fact there's a stick shift. I love that. It's very rare these days. Very rare, exceedingly rare. So it's good in that regard. But again, if I was a millionaire, if I somehow got a $100,000 check in my pocket, well, that'd be awesome. I'd probably do a house or down payment for a house. But nevertheless, let's say I had to buy a sports car and I had to spend $100,000 on it. Well, for me, you know me, it's going to be green because I like green cars. But in seriousness, it's going to be gas powered, going to have a stick shift, and it'll be a fun track toy. Now, what would I pick? A Lotus for $100,000, where you do get a gas engine, you do get a stick shift, get an okay interior. The design, it doesn't look too bad. They got some fun colors to choose from. Or would I choose a Porsche? I mean, that $100,000 is almost enough for an entry-level Porsche 911 these days. Unfortunately, not enough for the Carrera T, which is the track version of the stick. But, and I know it's not, apples to apples. A used Lotus, still around $80,000 to $90,000. At that price point, you get a used Porsche 911 with a stick shift. That's going to have a lot better support in terms of, not just buying it, but servicing the vehicle, getting parts for the vehicle. I mean, there's a whole community around Porsche. I mean, Porsche Club America is a thing. So you're going to be taken care of. And again, Porsche, they'll service vehicles for decades. Granted, it might cost you an arm and a leg. They'll still service and help maintain your vehicle. Lotus in the U.S. infrastructure in terms of the dealership networks, repair networks, that's always been spotty, to say the least. And again, there's some reliable parts of the car, mainly the Toyota parts. But what's the compelling reason to buy it? It's no longer the very lightweight, fun track toy. If you want that, realistically, in the United States these days, really, you just have the Mazda Miata, which is that's a great fun car. Say those around $40,000. And again, there's something to be said about the racing heritage of Lotus. Some people like the British aspect of it. Comparing it to an Aston Martin is a lot cheaper than that. So it's cheaper than other, British fancy vehicles. But I don't think there's enough of those people to actually sustain the company with the previous business plans they've had. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Lotus. And again, I hope they make it. You always want more competition, more in the free market, more consumers, or more choice to consumers. But I mean, hopefully this is the last layoff they have to do. And I do hope they get back to the roots of the company and leaning more into the enthusiasts. And again, I know they probably will have to make an SUV just to try to bolster some of the profits, like nearly every automotive company has. Maybe somehow they find some success in that category, though I'm pretty skeptical that consumers will fleet towards it. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Apologies, I always forget to switch out the monitors in terms of where I have my little template for the show, or talk about the headers versus the actual material I reference. You got to put that in front of me. Thanks for the feedback. I know to do that. Now, going over to the Cultural Pride podcast, you have Matt Walsh calls for common sense restrictions on transgenders and goes viral on social media. Now, it's brought to us, of course, thanks to Matt Walsh, hashtag the Matt Walsh blog on X. And when she says, quote, "It's time to have a national conversation about common sense restrictions on transgenders," unquote. He got, again, 1.2 million views and 46,000 likes, which is quite a few to say the least, though. Not to brag, I got 4 likes on a video last week and 5 likes on a tweet, as youth might say, going viral to say the least. Now, it used to be a mental disorder in terms of the DSM-5, and again, this is Matt Walsh referencing the recent trans shooter that we've had with the Minnesota Catholic school shooter. And this instance, right now it's not technically a mental illness. And again, when you buy a firearm in the United States, you have to fill out a 4473. Think of it as a job application for buying a firearm. And on there, you have to say you're not addicted to any drugs. You also have to say you're mentally fit. And as the law is written now, they qualify. And being very pro-gun, I'm very skeptical in terms of ever taking someone's ability to arm themselves. And even though they have a disproportionate high rate of hurting people in terms of these mass shootings, I don't think there's a legal mechanism that would restrict their firearm ownership that would not be, in turn, then later used against people like Matt Walsh, myself, and others. And I think we've seen it time and time again with the slippery slope. Now, I would say it's no longer a theory. The slippery slope is a proven thing. I mean, we certainly have to have a talk about how we help these people in terms of disarming them. I can't think of a legal mechanism to do that. Now, again, some states, though I don't believe in them, including Minnesota, have red flag laws, which, again, I think those are unconstitutional because, again, they are taking your property before you have any due right, before you even have a court date. Now, in terms of having talk about common sense restrictions, I think we should have a common sense restrictions on, what about Big Pharma? What about, these surgeons? How are these kids still getting all this? Remember when, leftists said this wasn't happening? The cliche leftist thing of all time. First they say, oh yeah, this isn't happening, you're crazy. Then they say, well, it's happening, but it's infrequent. Then they say, well, it's happening, it's a good thing. Then they say, it's happening, you should tolerate it. And then they say, it's just happening, and you should celebrate it. We've seen this on every cultural issue from leftists throughout the past couple of decades. Just time and time again. Now, in terms of restrictions, I'm not sure, legally speaking, how would you do that? Would you say maybe we should stop pumping them full of SSRIs? Now, that's not just trans individuals that are being pumped full of those drugs. There's a lot of young men these days in the United States. A lot of public schools will have those psychiatrists, they'll pump full of those drugs. And when we see a lot of these mass shootings, not all of them, but many of them just so happen to be on these antidepressant drugs, these SSRIs. And it doesn't help that some doctors get kickbacks from those pharmaceutical sales reps. So I'm pretty skeptical about SSRIs. So again, I'm not a doctor. I would argue I actually have better ethics than some doctors these days, so it's not saying much. Now he says, common sense restrictions. And I think we could have a talk about I'm trying to think what would happen on a state versus federal level to protect more lives, to ensure these people actually get the real help. I don't think, and again, the statistics are pretty valid in terms of statistics show whether they do or do not have the surgery or do or do not have the being pumped full of hormones, transgender individuals have the same rate in which they take their own lives. Showing that these surgeries, these pills, these drugs, I would argue, are doing nothing effectively to help them. However, they are very much helping Big Pharma. They're very much helping these surgeons who are making money hand over fist as they get a client for life once these people are put down these paths. I think that's something we should really talk about in terms of, I think it should be eventually classified as medical malpractice. Now, going to some of the first comments, when the first comments comes to us, thanks to Big Pharma, this quote, where transgender people used the bathroom before the 1970s is a mental institution, getting 417 likes. We also have Amuse saying terror trans is real, enabling and celebrating mental illness might seem compassionate, but is very dangerous for the general public and forces trans persons to accept his fate, even if their treatments, getting 99 likes. I Love American News says this is child abuse, is a boy dressed up in a dress, and mom's on a cell phone, and mom is thinking mommy loves me as much as her phone. 176 likes, which, yeah, when you look at who's instigating things, it's a lot of fatherless households or households in which the father is effectively neutered. You've seen this with the gender reveal where their child will go down these paths and they'll jump out of a box and celebrate, and the dad will be standing there with his dad. His eyes are just dead inside because he knows he failed. Not all times, but countless. See, more often than not, it's the crazy liberal white women pushing this on their children. Going down more and more. You also have huge retard says, I know what to do with trans people on a helicopter, but that did get 351 likes. Hollow has a picture of a trans individual in a tank top and jean shorts. I don't think those have ever been fashionable for guys. And it's juxtaposition with a picture of Ralph Wiggum from The Simpsons that says, "No, I'm a woman," which my Ralph Wiggum impression might be the worst one of all time, but I will nevertheless make the attempt. "I'm a woman now," which, nah, that's terrible, but I made the attempt. Claire Z says, anything before common sense restrictions, this is quote, anything before common sense restrictions on Gunzo gained 309 likes and 292 responses. One of the best examples of engagement baiting, or, well, just being effective with engaging the audience, because, again, this got the most responses. Was he ratioed? Jason says, let's focus on the actual problem. And he pulls up a picture compilation of the past, was this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 shooters that were trans individuals. The trans man with earrings, big red flag. Was it pigtails and a dress? You have a Minnesota representative who had the t-shirt that says, well, had a K-bar knife on it, and it says protect trans kids. And of course, she has a typical leftist glasses. And that got 320 likes. So, yes, he did, in fact, actually ratio that individual by the name of Claire Z. Now, she says, I agree. The problem is that the Nazis, the real problem is that the Nazis, everyone seems to be conveniently silent about. What? Got 26 likes. So apparently it's perhaps he's referencing the trans individual shooter, which again, on his holster in one of his manifesto videos did mention in Sharpie that he said that 6 million wasn't enough, referencing the Holocaust, getting 26 likes. I also have Orange Blooded saying, quote, Hunter Biden got pardoned from 3 gun-related crimes. I do not want to hear another liberal or Democrat talk about gun control laws. Get 106 likes. Yep. He literally threw a gun away in a school zone and also broke federal law by lying on a 4473, which again, think of it as a job application to purchase a firearm. You have to say on that piece of paper, you agree, you swear that you are not addicted to illegal substances and you are of a sound mind. Which, now granted, libertarians, and again, I'm not a fan of most background checks and gun laws because it just hurts law-abiding citizens. However, a lot of people do argue you have a right to not self-incriminate, and many people would argue that by filling out that paperwork, you're being forced to. Another topic for another time, perhaps. But yeah, Democrats conveniently forget about Hunter Biden being let off the hook. And it's so funny to see people ask the White House when Biden was, I was about to say, in office. Maybe more accurately, when he was rolled into office. And they asked, hey, do you think he'll ever pardon his son and Karine Jean-Pierre? Would I say, oh, no, that's ridiculous. And of course, he pardoned his son. Or perhaps more accurately, the auto pen signed his signature to pardon his son. Big Z says, guns don't kill people. Radically lefties do. 145 likes. Let's see. John Wesley Harden says, if we want common sense on guns, we'd get called racist. What? Getting 83 likes? Pizza Time says, who shoots the guns? 12 likes. So Trollius says, yeah, we're not going to let you kill our kids and tell us we can't protect ourselves. Getting 69 likes, which, yeah, I would say, especially nowadays, take proper training and stay prepared, aka stay strapped. And which Maker says, weird, I've never seen a gun just walk out and kill people on its own. Getting 63 likes, which, true. Although Sig has walked into the room. Which, fun pun if you know what SIGs go boom all the time on their own. But nevertheless, let's see. Person is pretty much racial beyond all belief. Going back to the main comment section. Yeah, Zolarius Slammer Hold says conversation over. And he has a picture compilation of all the different genders. And he highlights that, male and female. He says those two are genders. The rest are mental illness, getting 220 likes. Let's see. Global Index says that Peru officially classified transgender people as mentally ill, getting 25 likes. Charlotte Johnson says it's time for exorcism, and some of the crude drawings from the Trans Manifesto shooters, or his shooter, getting 86 likes. And Fanatic says start by reclassifying it as what is mental illness, getting 130 likes. And again, I think in terms of actually helping them, and again, I'm not a fan of psychiatry or most therapists or anything like that. However, for these individuals, we've seen the drugs don't do anything to help them, and surgeries don't do anything to help them. I think therapy, and I think that'd be a hell of a lot more effective. And again, a lot of these kids, you look at some studies, a lot of these kids just grow out of it. A lot of it is a phase. Being a Tom girl used to be a thing. Now they chop you up. If you're a boy, if you play with, some parents are so mentally vacuous and evil. They saw a boy playing with a doll and decided to butcher him. Because he picked up a doll? That's horrifying. Yeah, it's also radical leftist parents who are to blame, obviously. Also have M. Johnson says, quote, anyone who has legally changed their gender has undergone gender-affirming care or is on the process as such should be barred from owning firearms and have their guns taken away, getting 280 likes. He ratioed. Argus says no, they need to be locked up in asylums, and there they will take away everything that could be remotely used as a weapon, including butter knives and shoestrings. But advocating for gun control is not the answer. Getting 12. I'm gonna get 13 likes. So it'll be interesting to see with Trump in office. I think there is a possibility. There is a true possibility they actually reclassify it as a mental illness. I wonder, and I think that I would argue more than 50% of Americans would probably support that. Because again, I think the goal, I think everyone, I would hope, I mean, some of those things, I don't know if leftists are just radically evil or if they just have a different methodology to try to solve a problem, which used to be back in the day, Republicans and Democrats, everyone used to have the same goals, but they would have different, the debate would be what approach is most effective to achieve these goals. And I mean, I would hope everyone wants these kids to grow up to be well-adjusted adults. So I would hope we'd be able to come together and talk about like, well, hey, we tried, we shouldn't have, but we tried your way with the surgeries and the drugs. Now we're going to try, not that. What about just talk to them a little bit, not trying to butcher their bodies. I think the average American because again, I think everyone they should get some help. And obviously what they've been doing is not effective. So I suspect the average American would be in support of reclassifying it under the DMS-5. But let me know your thoughts because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting cultural news, it turns out the Minnesota Catholic school shooter, well, he regretted being trans and says he was brainwashed. Now, this brought to us thanks to Libs at TikTok. And she says, quote, the Democrat Party grooms kids into being transgender and turns them into radical LGBTQ terrorists. This is a screenshot from the New York Post written by Diana Norizani and Patrick Riley. And they say, quote, Minneapolis school shooter, I won't say a piece of shit's name, confessed he was, quote, tired of being trans. And he said, I wish I was never brainwashed myself. And this got 640,000 views and 22,000 likes, which, yeah, we need records on, who hurt this kid, who put him down that destructive path. Because again, this is another thing I think we'll see. I think most of the end result in terms of brainwashing these kids and hurting them will be malpractice lawsuits against doctors and kids suing their parents. I think, legally speaking, that's probably going to be the most common resolve we see over the next couple of years. We see more and more people regret these transitions that they're put through before they can even consent, which is disgusting, evil, and wrong. And it's an instance where, who's pushing this on them? Some public schools, some places like California, passed a law that says, well, a teacher can start pushing your kid down that path, even using their preferred pronouns. They don't have to tell the parent. Gavin Newsom signed that into law. That was actually the final straw that inspired Elon Musk to move out of the country. It's such a backward-ass place. It might as well be a country, but to leave the state, as well as, have his businesses move the state, and subsequently his employees all vanished. And was it the school? Was it the therapist? Teachers? Was it the parents? Who told this child, who, again, isn't old enough to consent, has a lot of questions about his changing body, his, going through puberty, and they said, here's a solution. Allegedly, you're going to pump you full of drugs and start doing surgeries on you. Take away parts of your body. Someone needs to be able to, there's someone out there to blame. It's not just him for, again, he chose the actions of what he did. Obviously, morally reprehensible, evil of him to hurt anyone else. I also want to know, who pushed him down that path of transition? Is it Big Pharma? Is it the doctors getting kickbacks for some of these drugs that are being used off-label? Same drugs that are used to castrate prisoners and child abusers? They just, Lupron specifically. They thought, oh yeah, we'll give this to kids now. Now, again, so going to the comments where the first one comes was thanks to Thick Eggshell saying, quote, he didn't brainwash himself, they did it for him. As a picture of the White House when Biden was rolling in office. It's a trans flag, or the Pride Progress flag, in the middle, taking up most of the attention, with the United States flags on left and right, which I'm actually surprised the Biden administration left the United States flags up. They got 170 likes. Paul Zupa says, quote, the Democrat Party should never be around kids, getting 148 likes, which, yeah. Liberty Pill Memes has a picture of a man holding up a sign that says, stop trans violence, getting 43 likes. The Conservative Alternative says, quote, the rise of trans terrorism in the United States can be traced back to the removal of gender identity disorder from the DSM-5. We stopped giving these people the help they need, and so their condition only got worse and worse, getting 91 likes. Saturn 8 says this bullshit started because of this bullshit, thanks to this asshole, as a drag queen literally dressed up as a demon, looking creepy, though granted I don't have much ground to stand on in terms of looks, But then you have a picture of the White House being lit up in rainbow. There's a picture of Obama getting 79 likes. Himanshu is a picture of I was about to say leftist parent. You know it's a leftist parent because it's a white female with long blue hair, presumably cowering, and she's in the room with a doctor and her child. And the doctor says the child isn't trans or just a shitty parent, getting 149 likes. Heart Speaks says real talk, and there's a girl with dreads holding a sign and says, quote, do you realize if Democrats would stop shooting people, gun violence would drop by 90%, getting 195 likes. Saturn 8 has a picture of a mom and a son, and his son goes, Mom, I don't want to cut off my junk. And mom goes, but I'm the only mom in my gym without a trans child. Stop being so selfish, getting 29 likes, which, yeah, I actually purchased the book. I need to actually read it. It eludes me at the moment. It's on my shelf to my left. Oh, what is it? Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shriver, in which she talks about the social contagion, especially among young girls, where if you see one transition, disproportionately, all the friends around her will also start to go down that very wrong path. And again, you see this in Hollywood, the scum who lives there. I mean, it's no coincidence. I mean, it's statistically impossible. With some of these female directors and female actresses, all their kids are trans. Like that nut job Megan Fox. Is it all 3 or all 4 of her boys? He dresses them up in dresses and claims they're trans. I pray she's not giving them any actual drugs or surgeries, and she's just, and again, it's still damaging the kids to do that in terms of parading them around in a dress in the public streets. But I mean, I hope she's limiting the damage, not actually castrating those kids. You just know she's doing it for social accolades in Hollywood because they celebrate that stuff. It's like their new Taco Bell dog for their purse. It's evil, but it's social accolades for people who are leftist. Now, scrolling down, you also have RoboMinic. It says Democrats normalize mental illness. There's I forget what trans member of the government that is. And you have Tim Walsh cheering him on, getting 72 likes. The bunny rabbit hole has 3, I guess it's not words, it's a target emoji, his response. And he has a picture of the Pride Progress flag and says, giving children hormones and SSRIs is a bad idea, getting 102, making 103 likes. Scrolling down more and more. What do you say? Very specific profile name. Says Democrats. There's a picture of 2 gals and child. And the gal goes, Doctor, I want you to cut off one of his fingers. And doctor says, I'm referring you to you for psychological counseling. Then the mom goes, Doctor, I want you to cut off his junk. And the doctor goes, so brave, getting 82 likes, which, yep. You have Rocks and Cows commentary account. Says, quote, nothing to see here. Everything's fine. There's a party of hate and violence, which I purposely mispronounced that state as a slight to them since they're weak and conquered. You have all Democrat leaders, which look crazy. Granted, those are just screenshots. You can take a screenshot of anyone. They look stupid. Granted, some of them have more disproportionate footage of looking stupid, like me, but nevertheless, they'd get 24 likes. Tim says his parents should be charged with child abuse. Agree 110%? Well, I was about to say 5 likes, got 7 likes. Now, you also have Dr. Lucine Wolf commentary account. Saying, quote, nobody asks the obvious question here. A kid literally confesses he was, quote, tired of being trans, admits he was brainwashed, and the story gets spun into silence. If that line had come from a Christian conservative, the media would be blasting it for weeks. Patterns don't lie. Groom kids young, medicate them into oblivion, fill their heads with ideology, and act shocked when it explodes. So ask yourself, who benefits from broken kids turned into radical soldiers? And why is every institution covering its tracks? Something ugly is hiding in plain sight. Yes. Getting 181 likes. Let's see. American Dad, though I don't think it's actually a stand from that TV show, has a picture of Lisa, the meme of Lisa, giving the presentation. And it says, quote, there's no such thing as trans, you're just playing gay dress up. Getting 14 likes. Also have Kentucky Girl. Pretty good marketing. You know exactly what she is from. Good old Kentucky, which is known for bourbon, Corvettes, horse racing. That concludes your daily lesson of history, or what you need to know about geography for Kentucky. Also rhymes with lucky. You also have her saying, quote, he was pumped full of cross-sex hormones, probably on SSRIs too, and he had a history of severe mental illness. Marked by his fantasies about mass shootings starting in 7th grade, then his dipshit mom decided to help him transition into, I won't say the new name that he chose, but it's pretty lazy and cliche, like for me going, oh, yeah, it's and she says the gender ideology is dangerous, getting 228 likes. Let's see. Thrill the Gorilla says, from the mouth, mental illness, leave our kids alone, getting 55 likes. Trying to see if there's any contrarian statements. Let's see here. Drew has a screenshot, though I don't know where he's referencing it from. Now, Drew says, quote, insurance coverage for gender transitioning surgery for a minor in California is protected by state law as a transgender, gender diverse, and intersex inclusive care act mandates coverage for gender affirming care, as they call it, by California-based health plans. However, specific benefits may vary, so you may contact your insurance provider to understand the exact coverage requirements and any potential out-of-pocket cost, like co-payment scheme for lice. Yep. You also have Tom Fitch says, quote, he was suicidal and psychopathic enough from his transition, directed and promoted by his liberal globalist communist parents. And they have a close-up of his rifle sight, which has literally killed Donald Trump, and some Russian words is Megavai. And not good advertising, but the sight optic is primary arms. 4 likes. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, and maybe we'll actually know the truth in terms of who was the one who pushed him down this dark path. I can't but think it was probably, again, the leftist parents, then the doctors, maybe in the school. Maybe it's a combination of all three. But let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the political part of the podcast, you have a Minnesota mayor saying they want to ban guns. They want to get rid of assault rifles, also known as black rifles, also known as a standard semi-automatic rifle. Now, this brought to us thanks to the Bradleys over at X.com. They say Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says they want a nationwide federal ban on assault weapons, which again is a term that Democrats, evil and smart, they actually did polling, and they did a bunch of studies to see what's the scariest way we can refer to firearms. They actually did poll different terms like, sniper rifle, pistol, and they found that assault rifle scares people that are uneducated about guns. They're trying to make people think that everyone has a machine gun. I wish that were the case. However, machine guns have been restricted since the 1934 NFA Act, or National Firearms Act of 1934, and because of Ronald Reagan in 1986, that means if you want a machine gun, which I would argue is your God-given right, the machine gun had to be manufactured as well as registered with the U.S. government before 1986, and because supply demand is very expensive. So a full auto AR-15 or full auto M4, those are about $30,000 now because, again, had to be manufactured and registered before 1986, and your state has to allow it. More than half the states do. So your standard $1,000 AR-15 is now $30,000 if it has that fun switch. Now, obviously he's mentally vacuous. He's a Jacob. Well, let's hear what he has to say. I was about to make a joke, say maybe he gives some very articulate good reasons. Obviously he doesn't, but we'll hear what Mr. Jacob has to say.
We need a statewide and a federal ban on assault weapons.
Never gonna happen. They'll stay vigilant. Morons clapping like seals.
We need a statewide and a federal ban on high-capacity magazines.
Never gonna happen. High-capacity magazines. When they say that, they're referring to this. A standard 30-round PMag. Well, this is a PMag because it's manufactured by Magpul. I mean, they're so common I give them away as a promo or just, to clients. 30 rounds. That's the standard capacity as invented and given out with a rifle when Eugene Stoner invented the AR-15 all those years ago. Ironically enough, in California, the most gun-restricted state out there, when he worked for Armalite. That's why it's called the AR-15, the Armalite rifle. He says he wants to get rid of high-capacity magazines. Now, maybe, I don't think he is, he's referencing the 60-round magazine that the trans shooter had. But again, trying to blame the object. He's not asking, maybe we should talk about Big Pharma. Maybe we should talk about who forced this kid to transition, who brainwashed him, who abused him. No, they're going to try to blame the inanimate object and use every tragedy they can to push their agenda like Democrats always do. And again, we've had this before. We had the assault weapons ban in 1994. They lasted until, was it 2004 or 2008? They had the same thing where they tried to limit those magazine sizes to 10 rounds. They got rid of some characteristics on scary black rifles. Guess what? The same amount of mass shootings happened. It had no effect. 3 independent studies showed that it had no effect. In addition, I would argue, to being unconstitutional. And thanks to Brewer effect, yeah, they're not, in terms of the Supreme Court, they said you cannot ban firearms in common use. And yeah, those PMags, I mean, there are probably no less than, was it 30 million of these in the United States, at least? I would argue that's pretty common use.
There is no reason that someone should be able to reel off 30 shots before they even have to reload.
Yes, I can name many reasons. Well, one is mobs trying to attack your house. Number one reason, though, is the government. Does the government have that? Then you deserve to have it. That's what the founding fathers wanted. But he said there's no reason to have that. Well, if he said there's no reason, then why do police have it? Why do militaries have it? If you read anything by the founding fathers, no, leftists usually don't. They wanted the people to have the same, nay, more firearms than the actual government themselves.
We're not talking about your
Also, you want to limit it to 10 rounds. You have that in places like California, one of the most dangerous states out there. Places like Chicago. I mean,
father's hunting rifle here.
Yes, that's because the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. Democrats have been saying this for almost, decades upon decades. Yeah, the founding fathers didn't give a shit about hunting. They cared about an evil totalitarian government. They cared about a government having more power than the people. They feared that. That's why they said the Second Amendment is so important.
We're talking about guns that are built to pierce armor and kill people. Why do we have them coming in by the trunk loads onto our streets around the country?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, a myriad of uses. It says armor piercing. Yeah. Not by standard. You have the green, they call them armor piercing, but not really. Like the light crap. Why do we need all this? Yeah, because we're American and we don't trust our government. It's our God-given right to have that.
And this is not just about Minneapolis.
One of the most dangerous places already.
Because you can buy an assault rifle in Milwaukee, and that assault rifle is in Minneapolis by noon that very same day. And so when we talk about
So if your state already has those bans, that'd be interstate commerce. So I guess that'd be breaking the law. But Democrats say this a lot. When I grew up in the Midwest, better or worse, and they would always say, Chicago is so bad, but the guns always come from, Indiana, right next door. I mean, that's why it's so bad. We have all the restrictions in Cook County, which encapsulates the shitty of Chicago. But yeah, if it wasn't for Indiana with their loose gun laws, Chicago would be safe and great, which is laughable. Although dark humor is kind of sad because people die there because of the terrible leadership they have in Chicago and the culture. But easy way to disprove that. Well, why isn't it happening over there? You're saying, oh yeah, well, it doesn't work here because the guns keep coming from Indiana. Indiana's more lax on guns. Why isn't the crime terrible? Why is Chicago so much worse? Chicago has the laws that say you can't own it. Indiana, a lot safer. A lot of places, in fact, places with the most amount of firearm ownership usually have the lowest amount of crime. I can't but almost joke in Texas, people get mad when you cut each other off, but usually it doesn't escalate because there's a 98% chance that someone's packing heat in their car. I'm only partially exaggerating those statistics, but not by much.
Work that needs to be done, it's going to take a whole lot of unity from a lot of different cities, and I've gotten calls from their mayors who have experienced virtually the same thing that we experienced yesterday. And because we love our kids, because we love our family.
You love your kids, but you insist and you actually made Minneapolis a sanctuary state, or Minnesota a sanctuary state, by saying, oh yeah, we love our kids. We're going to pump them full of hormones and drugs that we have no effect what's going to happen long term, and also allow surgeries to butcher them. That's their definition of love. That's horrifying.
Because we love our constituents, we all have the obligation to act. And what you see here
is a loser.
You see federal congresswomen. You see we see our Minneapolis state delegation. You have council members from both Minneapolis and St. Paul. You have our sheriff. You have Moms Demand Action, Protect Minnesota.
Those broads.
And every town, all united and rallying around a common theme, which is keeping our cities and our country safe.
Except for Big Pharma, the surgeries, and also disarming law-abiding citizens, such as teachers. A lot of shitty states disarm teachers. I would argue their God-given right to defend themselves and their students. A lot of, interestingly enough, you have the opposite, place like Georgia, where after a shooting happened, They said, you know what? We're going to empower our teachers, and we're going to put up a sign that says, if you mess with this school, you're leaving a body bag. They literally had a sign on a Georgia school that says, 9 of our 12 teachers are packing. Guess which ones? Again, a lot of people are going after these schools because they are soft targets because they are so poorly defended. Many of them don't even have an armed guard on site. And most of them say, teachers, you're not allowed to carry. Which is sad to think that our banks, our sporting stadiums, our sports balls arenas, and most of our areas are better defended than children. Well, let's see what he has to say. Maybe he has, I was about to say, maybe he has a more than two brain cells. I'm giving him too much credit, though.
And here's the thing. To the extent the federal government isn't willing to do it, to the extent a divided legislature prevents our state from acting, and by the way, I know that our Minneapolis delegation is on board with this work because they've been doing it. Thank you.
Weak, conquered state. Though conquered, they have a new flag based on Somalians.
But here's the final ask.
Oh, okay.
To the extent other levels of government are either unwilling or unable to keep cities safe, let us do it ourselves. We are responsible for 435,000 residents that call Minneapolis home and many more that come and go. I think we'd be happy to ban assault rifles here in Minneapolis.
A lot more victims of Somalian crime, too. Yeah. Thank God for the Supreme Court, though some of them are morons. Because again, the standard right now is you cannot ban firearms in common use. That is a legal precedent by the United States Supreme Court, Brewer Effect. And, well, thankfully, how many AR-15s are there? Now, I asked Grok, and I think this is lowballing it. I asked him, how many AR-15s do civilians own in the United States? Now, it estimates 20 to 24 million AR-15s. Now, again, those are based on guesses by people who fill out background checks or 4473s, and, based by a guesstimate of how many times, stores are asking the government for background checks, to signify a gun sale. However, that also doesn't count guns that are manufactured at home in terms of, homemade AR-15s, one of the easiest rifles to make. I would venture to say there's at least, if I had to guess, 40 million AR-15s in the United States. I mean, I'm pretty damn sure that counts as common use. So, if the Supreme Court continues to have a modicum of intelligence, not guarantee, but yeah, they're going to make sure the AR-15 stays around. Now, it's been disappointing. Some of the Supreme Court, they've actually pushed away some pro-gun cases. They said, oh yeah, no, we're going to take those on, which I think is like how they acquiesce from their responsibilities from time to time. But yeah, he's saying the same cliche thing Democrats have done for decades. And spoiler alert, it's been tried in many states, in many cities. I'm sorry, shitties, as I pejoratively call them. Chicago being one of the poster boys. I remember, thankfully, I was not in the county of Cook County, which encapsulates the shitty of Chicago, but they had an issue where they actually banned ownership of certain guns based on patterns like the AK-47, AR-15. Spoiler alert, did nothing to deter crime at all. Did nothing to deter the number of gangbangers who are shooting up each other on the weekend, a number of innocent people who are perished. And no effect. I mean, California's banned it for I think multiple decades. They've had a magazine limiter in California. I mean, they have firearms that are called California compliant. They're bastardized beyond all belief. It's ridiculous how rudimentary the firearm becomes in order to be compliant with California. So they're trying, and again, this happens, it's kind of the cliche. I mean, Dianne Feinstein is famous for this. She actually, after a shooting, she actually brushed off, she had legislation in her desk. She goes, oh yeah, we'll use this. And she said she was literally waiting for her time to bring it out. Kind of horrifying that they literally wait for tragedies and then try to exploit them. Now again, who is responsible for this trans shooter shooting up the Catholic school? Well, he was underage, so I would argue the parents had some culpability. Psychiatrists, the parents also started to transition the child, pump him full of hormones, doing God knows what to his brain, maybe putting him on SSRIs. Democrats will blame everything except the firearm. And yet, it's been tried time and time again. Unconstitutional, has no effect, except, I would argue, hurting law-abiding citizens, who now more than ever need to defend themselves. I would argue, wherever you're going, if your state allows it, and I was going to say not legal device, maybe it doesn't allow it, but you should be strapped and properly trained, of course. You should be having concealed carry on you at all times these days, because it's up to you to defend yourself and your family. Police are going to be always late, just kind of the very nature. They're a reactionary force. They will get to the situation eventually, but why not stop the shooter? Why not stop the bad guy infinitely quicker so there's not so many casualties? And in terms of Minneapolis and Minnesota, which has become a weak conquered state, they may very well try to ban them in their state. It's not out of the realm of possibility. That's why I always tell people, be vigilant. Again, we are winning. More and more states have passed constitutional carry. It used to be and again, I still suggest taking a concealed carry class because you learn the legal ramifications of shooting a firearm. Again, if you shoot a bad guy, you're still going to go to jail. You're still going to get charged. You might even get charged civilly or sued. So again, it's a momentous thing to take a life, even if it's taking one in a good way, so to say, in terms of preserving more lives by killing a bad guy. But we're seeing more and more good things happen to pro-gun initiatives. Now, in terms of the school, I think teachers should always be armed if they're competent and they choose to. Should be forced to do it, necessarily, perhaps. But yeah, it's ridiculous to see more and more of these kids hurt in public schools, and it's ridiculous that we guard everything except schools in the United States. And again, some of them do have a on-site police officer. I would argue that's one person. Why not all the teachers? Again, it's deterred crime before. Why not do it again? So again, stay vigilant. Always donate. I'm not going to pitch any specific pro-gun organizations. Some of them are better than others. I don't get paid by any of them. But yeah, I would say do some research on which pro-gun initiative or nonprofit you prefer in terms of preserving the Second Amendment, because again, they'll never stop going after the Second Amendment. They hate it so much. They want the government to have all the power, even though freed anything by in the Federalists or the Founding Fathers, they want people to have the same, if not more, guns than the Founding Fathers. I mean, even battleships, cannons, everything that the government had, people had greater. But let's go to the comments, because maybe someone will agree with that douchebag mayor. Scrolling down, one of the first ones, well, not first by number of likes, but most handsome ones from the Topping Show. I say, quote, "Nothing they hate more than freedom and true equality. God made man, Samuel Colt, Gaston Glock, and Eugene Stoddard made him equal," which, yep, 110% true. A good quote. Obviously, I'm biased. Texas Patriot says, quote, "How about the federal ban on Democrats?" Getting 129 likes. You have Truth Warrior saying, quote, "Hunter Biden was pardoned from 3 gun-related crimes. I do not want to hear about another liberal or Democrat talk about gun control laws." Got 100. I got 103. This week, got 104 likes. Yeah, Hunter Biden famously lied on a 4473. Again, think of it as a background check or your job application to buy a gun. He lied. He was on drugs at the time. On that piece of paper, he signed and said, "Oh yeah, I agree, I'm not on drugs." He was. He also disposed of a firearm in a school. Was it a garbage bin within throwing distance of his public school? So he threw away a loaded firearm into a garbage bin right close to a school. And of course, he was not charged. He got a pardon, of course. Let's see here. Let's see. Excommunicado says, quote, "Rifles of any kind were involved in 297 deaths last year in America." It says constipation killed 2,167. Of course, CDC and FBI getting 25 likes, which, yeah, that's another thing. They always want to go after black rifles, which I think is kind of a little racist. That's why I get tan rifles. But in all seriousness, yeah, more people are killed by blunt objects in the United States than actual rifles. I mean, literally baseball bats. More people die from those types of deadly interactions versus rifles. By far. It's literally 10x more. You also have Ralskin, Ralskin Slim, quote, from Ronald Reagan, says, quote, "We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilted, rather than the law breaker. It is time to restore the American precept that individual accountability is accountable for his actions," getting 68 likes. Birds Freed has some picture of the British, and they're saying, "Kids are crying on TV, give us your guns for the children." And founding fathers say, "F off," getting 46. They get 47 likes. Santa's Tavern says, "Fortunately, the government does not have the authority to enact such a ban." There's a quote that says, "How many children have to die before you'll give up your guns to protect them?" And me, it says, "How many children have to die before you'll pick up a gun to protect them?" In 45, so 46 likes. I also have Chef Velasquez saying, "Idiots, the only criminals who have guns," getting 17, 18 likes. Holden Steele says, "The real problem is the transgender mental illness," getting 61 likes, going up like a stock. But of course, Democrats really ever address the actual issue. They always address the outlier. They always address, they never want to actually find a solution or fix the wound. They just want to put a band-aid over it. They don't want to address the core issue of what's not the core causation. They want to go after the inanimate objects. You have Jack Flynn says, cool, you have a bunch of Somalians coming in and you're going to disarm your citizens. Good job electing these losers. Getting 34 likes, which, yeah. Again, they've imported so many Somalians, they changed the state flag to a rudimentary, stupid flag that looks like one that's a bastardized version of a Somalian flag. Yeah, Chris says, not going to happen. Soy Boy getting 14 likes, which it actually might. Minnesota is extremely blue. And states have passed similar bans in the past. California is the best example of having a assault weapon ban, quote unquote, assault weapon ban, and having a magazine restriction or magazine limiters. Let's see. I don't see any contrarian statements thus far. Crackle says, guns don't kill people. People do dumbass, getting 10, so I get 11 likes. Rob B says, bro is surrounded by Somalians and he wants to ban his state from having guns, getting 7 likes. Mark Rudolph says we need a statewide ban and federal ban on Democrats, getting 11 likes. Let's see. Tim says we need to ban morons like him, getting 9 likes. A lot of people just saying, what about no? But again, I would argue stay vigilant. Make sure you're actually letting your opinion known to your electors. Say, hey, I'm pro Second Amendment. This is not the way to fix the problem. And of course, I would argue donate to one of those good, effective nonprofits that actually fights for our rights. But in terms of, could this happen in Minneapolis? Could this happen in Minnesota? Yeah, unfortunately it can. Horrifying. I think that is a possibility. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the business blunder of the day, you have carabiners being, recalled because they might, just break and kill you. Now, it's brought to us thanks to the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission, perhaps the only useful government website. Granted, it's a pretty low bar, which they say, quote, CAMP recalls Nimbus lock carabiners due to risk of serious injury or death from a fall. Which, there you can see those fancy carabiners right there, which I would argue 99.9% of the ones out there are fake and used by people for their keys. Now, they say, quote, the carabiner's automatic closing mechanism can break and prevent the gate from closing, posing a serious risk of injury or death due to a fall. Whoops. It says it's going to affect 12,600 units in addition to 2,100 that were sold in Canada. Yeah, up close to these pictures here. In terms of identifying it, say recall involves the Nimbus lock carabiners sold in gunmetal green, gunmetal, this real color, gunmetal fuchsia, and gunmetal blue. The affected carabiners are sold individually or part of the Nimbus 3-pack, the Locker Drawer Chaos, the Energy CR 3-pack, and Energy Nova pack. Only the carabiners are included in this recall. The affected carabiners have the following batch numbers, and you see that circled on screen: 1023, 1223, 0224, 0924, 1024, 1224, 125, 225, and 625. They note that consumers should immediately stop using them and reach out to the company over at www.camp-safety/Nimbus lock safety recall registration form for a prepaid return shipping label, return the recalled product. That Camp will inspect the return units and ship them back if the consumers if they actually pass inspection. If they do not, they'll be replaced free of charge. Now, good news, bad news. Good news is no one's been hurt. Bad news, already had issues. They say the firm received 21 reports of the closing mechanisms breaking. However, no injuries has been reported as of yet. These are sold at REI, Portland Mountain Shop, How Not To, and other stores nationwide, including CampUSA.com, Backcountry.com, Amazon, REI, MountainShop.com, and other websites from January 2024 and July 2025 for between $16 and, is insane, $86, which, again, when it comes to all this mountain climbing stuff, again, you're paying a premium for stuff that is, supposedly tested and actually worked. Again, I would argue less than 0.01% of all carabiners out there are actually load tested and used for climbing and, rated for climbing. It's usually just for people to hold their keys. And again, you're buying these from a trusted source. Especially REI. They're known for being for the outdoors, and presumably they do quality assurance tests when they're carrying their inventory and maybe do some research. So I want to say Business Blunder is a little bit on them as well. And these are imported by, Camp USA of Golden, Colorado. Recall number is 25-444, manufactured in China, or as I hear it, China. And again, it's good that no one's passed away from this. But again, this tool is, it's supposed to be used for actual climbing, and it fails to do, the one thing it's supposed to do. Yeah, so I gotta say, Camp, you and your carabiners, you are certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and a comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone, everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.